Morning, Professor.
Good morning, Mark. How are you doing today?
It's all good, all good. The
Glad to
project's
hear-
coming along well, if I can say so myself.
Glad to hear it. Any questions about the project before we get started, or anything else in regards to the class? So we're on the last week. It looks like everybody's getting a little bit tardy and a little bit late on coming to class. Good morning, Joyce.
Good morning, Professor. You had us stuck in the waiting room for a while, you know?
I know.
So people are not being tardy.
But I let you all in before 9 o'clock, so that's good. Give it a few more minutes, let some more people come in before we get started. So questions, concerns, you guys awake yet?
Professor, I have a quick question about the finals. So is it going to be like the midterm where you'd give us a couple of topics, and then when are you going to release the questions, if that's the way it's going to be?
It is going to be like that. I'll release the question probably at the end of the week.
Oh, okay.
The midterm's not due until the end of, what is it, next week?
Next week, yeah.
When is it?
I think the 18th or so.
Yeah, it's due the
Correct.
Thursday. So I'll probably give you about 3 or 4 days to work on it.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. And then I'll go over a little bit more what's going to be on the final exam at the end of the class. All right, we'll let a few more people come in before we get started. All right, we got 73. We'll wait until we get 80. So other questions, concerns?
Good morning, Andre. Nice
Hey, Andre.
shirtless outfit.
I think Andre's having some technical difficulties there. Good morning, Yolanda.
Good morning. How is everybody doing?
We're surviving for a Monday.
It's okay. Thanks for your efforts on the project, by the way.
Oh, no, thank you guys.
All right, well, let's get started. So let's start off with any questions concerning what's going on with the midterm or with the final or the group project. I can answer those right away. Wednesday's class is not going to be mandatory. I'm basically just going to answer any questions you guys might have about your final project. So I'll use that as kind of like an office hours where everybody will have time and no excuse not to show up. So if you have questions or your group has questions, you can come and see me during that. I'll be there for about an hour. So we can do it that way. I know we've had some difficulties getting everybody together in their groups because of different times and schedules. So I'm going to allot that time for everybody. So I'll be available. All right. Any questions about that? All right, then let's get started with our review, shall we? All right, so week 10, that's it, guys. Your last week of instruction. Woohoo! We're all excited, right? All right, so the final exam, we can do a little bit of review of what we're gonna go over, what everything you should know from this class. So markets to pursue, unique value to offer, resources, capabilities to develop, sustained advantage. Those are all very, very important to your final group project, as along with the SWOT, the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so this is all goes back to chapter 1. Two strategy and the cost advantage strategy. A firm reduces its price below all of its competitors, or a firm chooses the same price as competitors, which results in greater profit. So choosing which one to do is not always the easiest decision. We've given you plenty of examples of both. So chapter 2, we talked about Porter's 5 forces, the threat of new entry, competitive rivalry, buyer power, threat of substitute, supplier power. This is a matrix that you are going to use when you do your when you're going to recommend to me what industry I should get into. This is going to be very intricate part of that evaluation. So we're going to know which new industries that we're going to get into, and when it comes to manufacturing ceramics. The value chain, this is an industry value chain with the manufacturing process in it, as I showed you several different other types of manufacturing, but basically it boils down to secondary and primary, inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales and service, and then the secondary, and then also what you do with the manufacturing portion of it. Okay, resources, all assets, capabilities, organizations, proceed firms, attributes, the assets and resources. For firms, the physical resource, financial resources, human resources, and intangible resources. For example, on your final group project, we have all the human resources, we have the physical resources. We don't necessarily have financial resources, but we have the intangible resources. So those are things you're going to need to think about. And then the value chain analysis, this is a little bit more detailed. Firm infrastructure, human resources, technology development, procurement. All the good stuff from your midterm. The VRIO is something that you're going to look at when you are doing the project for me. So all those things. Should we let these guys in or not? What do you think? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right, fine. We'll let them in. All right. So the value chain. So we did all those for the midterm. So those are intricate parts of your final group project. So don't forget to include those. And the pastel, which is not a part of your final group project because we're not really doing anything international, but a pastel matrix frameworks is more along the lines for when you're going into a foreign economy or a foreign market. And a lot of the things that are going to affect that is the way the political government is, the way the economic growth is in that country, social aspects of the people who live in that country, and also technology. Logistics, a lot of times, do they have the technology and the environment to move products around the country? What Walmart found out in a couple of different places, Germany, India, that they didn't, that this social society was so different and the economics were different and the transportation was different. They couldn't keep up with their same model. All right, so you don't have to worry about that for your group project, but on the finals, a different story. So chapter 4, we talked about cost advantage strategies, and that was also on your midterm. Economies of scale, learning and experience effects, lowering costs due to proprietary knowledge, lower input costs, different business model. Then we also talked about forward and backward integration. And we used the oil companies as an example when we did that. So the oil companies, a lot of them have the integration all the way from oil exploration all the way until up to selling the gasoline to the end user consumer through their gas stations. Excuse me. Okay, and these are the kind of the a visual of what the oil companies do, everything from upstream, all the way from extracting the oil out of the ground and finding it, all the way to fuels, lubricants, and chemical products. Okay, so the reasons for vertical integration is capabilities, coordination, and control. So if you can control the oil from the time it comes out of the ground to the time that it puts into your gas tank, then you are going to be able to make a lot of money, and two, be able to control the quality and a lot of other things that go into that. Okay, so transaction specific asset, which is very much like our group project, the ceramics company, that company is made to do one thing, and that is build ceramics. So it's kind of difficult if you're specialized in one area to go into another area. So that's why we suggested ceramics. Okay, making versus buying. For example, if the company that's having the ceramics company make the blades, it's a lot less, not only is it a lot less expensive to buy it or to manufacture than it is to buy it, but also the quality, they can control the quality of the product. In real life, remember I gave you the example, you want to be able to save 25% or more when switching vendors or doing other cost-saving types of business. So that's just kind of a real life example for you to use later in life. Loss of flexibilities when you do vertical integration. Hold on, let me admit some people. Let's see what's in the chat. Geico says 15% or more. Yeah, Geico lies. All right, so let's see here. Dangers of outsourcing. You lose control or power of your product sometimes. In the case of many of these companies that have clothing manufactured overseas, by outsourcing them, they ended up having counterfeits, losing millions and millions of dollars due to counterfeits. So that's kind of a thing you have to be careful. Loss of intellectual property. For some countries, you cannot manufacture something in their country without giving them the intellectual property rights. So that's kind of a thing that you want to be aware of. Disney and Oriental Land Company will have a strategic alliance. So like your group project, you're not going to have a partnership or anything like that. You're most likely just going to have an alliance of some sort, whether it be contractual or exchanging assets, something of that nature. But you're not going to be able to do a partnership because the parent company won't let you do that. So choosing a strategic alliance, you only want to do that unless you cannot make it or buy it. Then you have to create an alliance. If you can make it or buy it or have resources to implement it, then you don't have to do an alliance. But if you do alliance, the way you create value is combine unique resources, pool similar resources, create new alliances, specific resources, and lower transaction costs. So if you have to do an alliance in your project, your group project, make sure the reason you're doing an alliance is because one of these reasons. Hold up, when a partner tries to exploit the alliance. Misrepresentation is when one of the partnerships lies or misrepresents itself, says, yes, I have the resources to do this, when actually they don't have the resources to do this. Okay, building an alliance management capabilities, alliance business case, partner assessment section, alliance negotiation and governance, alliance management, and asset and termination. So make sure that all of these things are in your life cycle of an alliance. Many of you in your first year that you're going to do your group project, you created some type of alliance. So like I always said, if you have a partnership or an alliance, make sure you have a termination plan. So you're not going, unless you plan on being in partnership with that group or that company for long term. But still, you're going to have some type of termination in case one of you voids out the contract or does something that you wanted to get away from. Okay, so strategic alliance partnerships, input that can differentiate your product in the minds of the customers, automakers, inputs that influence your brand or reputation. Example is Volvo. High value inputs or activities like steel in the auto manufacturing process. So alliancing with a partnership in steel because 90% of their product is steel. Inputs or activities that require significant coordination in order to achieve the desired fit and performance. So like we talked about with Toyota, creating a strategic alliance with the air conditioning company. So they have to coordinate quite a few different things. So these are your types of strategic alliance: contractual alliance, equity alliance, and joint venture. You won't be doing a joint venture for your group project. Equity alliance, possibly if you're depending on equity or money from that other company, but you can't give away any ownership because you don't actually own your company. You're part of a large corporation with a parent company governing you. Contractual agreement was an example that I used when we're HP authorized dealers. We have to abide by their rules and their regulations. We cannot just use their, if we weren't authorized, we couldn't use their logo in advertising and all this other kinds of good stuff. So that's what happens with a contractual agreement. An equity alliance, the collaborating firms often supplement contracts with equity holdings. So it's a combination of two, contracts and equity. So for example, if the company that you're going to have an alliance with gives you money for new equipment, they obviously are going to have a contract saying, okay, this is the money we're going to give you for new equipment. You pay us back at this amount in this time, or maybe we'll just give it to you as an investment. So you have to have a contract that states what kind of purpose that is. So Toyota owns between 5 and 49% of the equity of the 10 largest suppliers that they have. So that's a different type of, and the joint venture, which you guys are not going to do, which is cooperating firms combine resources. Okay. And these are just some of the things that NASA and Google combine resources to enhance their capabilities. Okay, so a vertical alliance is an alliance between firms who are positioned at different stages along the value chain, such as supplier and buyer. And then the horizontal alliance we talked about, even though there's different auto dealerships in an auto center and that they're all owned by a different company and they're all competitors, they pool a lot of their resources together for advertising, for leasing property, for sharing space and that kind of thing. So that's the main difference between a vertical alliance and a horizontal alliance. So vertical, you're not necessarily competitors. Horizontal, you are competitors. Okay. So vertical alliance, Toyota's relationship with the top 10 suppliers are considered vertical alliances when they invest in their companies. Usually formed to combine unique resources, create new alliance specific resources, or lower transaction costs. For example, with Walmart, a lot of the companies that they do business with or buy from, they're directly connected to their inventory system and to a lot of their SAP systems. So they can directly see without having to actually talk to anybody. They can directly see what inventory and ordering, and they can get it from a specific warehouse and have it shipped all over the country or the world. Vertical and horizontal alliances. We talked about Daimler Chrysler with the when they bought in. Both of them gained a lot from this. Both of them gained a lot of new technology. And Mercedes, what they did is they ended up with the SUV and the minivans and the big cargo van. Well, they're actually small cargo vans, but they're big for the countries that they use them in. Okay, so the difference between the multi-domestic strategy and the global strategy. Remember, we talked about this differentiation, adoption. For the multi-domestic, you can be more decentralized. You can cater to the local responsiveness to the people there, their tastes, their differences, as opposed to a global strategy, which is one thing, like a toothbrush. It doesn't need to be customized to each individual culture or country or the way they do things. So it's as opposed to Coca-Cola or Pepsi, where the taste of the individuals or the countries have different tastes, as opposed to South America or Africa or Europe. So the taste might differ slightly, so you can make the product a little bit differently. Okay, so this is something how we build on the SWOT, and the pastel is opportunities and threats. So you'll see these present themselves in political, economical, sociological, technological, legal, and environmental. And remember, the strength and weaknesses, those are internal. So when you're looking internally at a company, those are the internal things that create the strengths and weaknesses. Large reserves of cash are a strength. Weaknesses, sometimes companies have different types of weaknesses. Pastel again, already went over that. So what's the most important thing in class that we learned this quarter? Put it in the chat box, go ahead. Actually, better yet, let's just do a poll. I forgot I did that. Nobody likes why companies are bad. That's like my favorite section to do. I get to bag on Wells Fargo. It's been my bank for 20-something years. How companies work. All right, I'm going to end the poll in a few seconds. So only about 15 people are sleeping. That's good. All right. You guys ready to share the results? So most everybody said how companies work. Most important thing you can do in life is communication. Without communication, you're not going to know how companies are going to work. You're not going to know what your wife or your husband thinks, and you're not going to know anything else unless you communicate. So one of the most important things in business and in life is communications. All right, remember this guy? Okay, Gertz Hofstede. All right, so management prospect to keep knowledge and application for understanding cultures and business. There were 6 of them. The power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty, avoidance, pragmatism, indulgence. Remember we talked about pragmatism, how very often society has maintained some links with its own past while dealing with challenges of the present. So how well a country deals with the past of its of what it's been going, manufacturing, everything socially, economically, and how it integrates it into its current society. And then indulgence, relatively weak is considered indulgent, and relatively strong is called restraint. And then we used your book's example, administrative distances and economic distances, which basically measures the distance between not only geographically, but also culturally. All right. Why and where and how strategy is a goal and set of policies designed to achieve competitive advantage in a particular marketplace. Global strategy, which we've talked about, is a goal and set of policies to achieve advantage by leveraging resources, assets, and knowledge across geographic markets. All right. So some of the differences between countries that increase complexity and affect the success of international strategies include customers' tastes, needs, income levels. And this was where the pastel comes in: government regulations, legal systems, public tolerance for foreign films or firms. I'm sorry, some companies or some countries don't like particular other countries and they don't want anything to do with them. Reliability and basic infrastructure. For example, why Walmart had such a difficult time in India is because of the reliability and the infrastructure. It didn't have the highways, the freeways to bring large truckloads of goods and products, but it also didn't have the people who lived there didn't have the big SUVs to carry all the products home, right? Because basically they're used to shopping for a few days at a time, other than a few items in some of the rural areas. Okay, so competing international, we talked about multi-domestic, global, and arbitrage. Competitive advantage, the 3 C's again: configuration and coordination. So all of this you're going to have into your final group report. International strategy and local responsiveness versus standardization. So remember, we said that every McDonald's has a basic menu, the Big Mac, but it also has a lot of local other items that are customized just for that area. Arbitrage strategy takes advantage of countries' competitive advantage resource of low-cost labor or unique resources. And then we talked about the purchasing power parity of the ergonomics of the Big Mac. Remember, the cost of a Big Mac in South of Africa, as opposed to where the highest it is in the United States or the Scandinavian countries. So basically, the Big Mac economics basically tells you what a basket of goods costs in one country versus a basket of goods costs in another country. Cultural arbitrage capitalizes on difference in cultures between countries by actively using the culture of one country as a selling point. For example, IKEA, everybody thinks IKEA is a great example of what you want to buy from the Swedish country. So that's kind of how its culture is implemented into its products. Administrative arbitrage capitalizes on difference in taxes, regulations. We talked how Ireland had the cheapest and lowest tax rate in Europe. So if you were going to go open up a corporate headquarters, or not a corporate headquarters, but a regional headquarters, you would probably pick Ireland over a lot of other countries because of the tax advantages. Innovation, the conversion of a novel concept. Radical innovation, we use the example of Uber. An innovative strategy that introduced a fundamental difference between business models than the rivals. Okay, and this is a visual Venn diagram of what that looks like. And then understanding business models. We talked about this towards the end of the quarter. The value proposition, customer segments, channels, customer relationships, and then revenue streams, key resources, key activities. And we talked about this when it came to different companies like Amazon, Thumbtack. We did a more elaborate thing on Thumbtack. So in the beginning, Amazon kind of put Barnes and Noble's almost out of business online. They took it over, and now the authors are taking control of theirs by doing directly from the internet to the customers. So you can see the way innovation changes things, way technology changes, the way we do business. In chapter 11, competitive strategy, we talked about all these wonderful things. Strategic group, a set of companies that compete in similar ways with similar businesses. We use the Delta, American Airlines, and United, our full fare group as opposed to the low fare group. And what keeps them as a barrier to mobility. For example, the airplanes that Southwest uses, they wouldn't be able to fly international with those airplanes because they wouldn't be able to provide meals and other amenities that they need to do when flying internationally. Okay, and then we talked about the strategy canvas, a useful tool not only for uncovering existing differences among competitors, but also identifying new ways to beat rivals. So we talked about Thumbtack, how all the different key partners, key activities, value proposition, relationships. Okay, and then the competitor profile, response profile, a competitor that identifies its objectives and assumptions, its strategy, its resources and capabilities in order to anticipate how the competitor might respond to rival actions. So remember we talked about what drives a competitor, what is a competitor's incentive to do certain things, what is the competitor actually doing, and what is a competitor capable of doing. And that's another thing you're going to be very, very careful about. What can a competitor do? Do they have the financial resources to put you out of business by dropping their prices so low that you can't compete? Or do they have other capabilities of doing other things? So we use Southwest and Delta as an example earlier, and we talked about how if Southwest would take away some of Delta's airline routes, they would drop the prices on those. 4 principles for identifying potential competitive moves. Know your strengths and weaknesses. That's an internal SWOT that you need to know. Bring strengths against weaknesses. Protect and neutralize vulnerabilities. Develop strategies that cannot be easily imitated or copied. And when you're doing your suggestions for your group project, I am going to take all of these into consideration. So make sure you address them. Then we talked about game theory. Structured approach to analyzing a competitor. So we talked about the Nash equilibrium and the tit for tat strategy, which is the Nash equilibrium. So for every move that they make, you make the same move. We use the couponing with Coke and Pepsi. How 1 week Pepsi would give a coupon and make more sales than Coke, and the next week Coke would make a coupon and get more sales than Pepsi. Okay, so the dominant strategy in game theory, a set of actions that are always played no matter what, and then a tit for tat strategy that responds to like moves. So when they move when they give coupons, you give coupons. Okay, and then remember we talked about strategic response in stable environments and a monopoly. You really don't have to worry about that too much, but that applies to a lot of utility companies, and they're not going to give up their monopoly. So they're going to do everything they can to keep that. Oligopoly, like we talked about, the what's going on with the cable companies, the cell phone companies. One discounts heavily, the other discounts heavily, and vice versa. And then in a perfect competition, like in my industry, it's all based on pricing and trying to do a differentiation strategy. Like we try and give away a maintenance contract for free for the first year, as opposed to our competitors who only give 90 days. So you have to differentiate yourself. Then we talked about the McKinsey company alignment, a condition where organizational elements fit together and reinforce each other. So this is a 7S strategy model. Remember we talked about the hard 3, which is a strategy, system, and structure, and the soft square, staffing, skills, style, and shared values. So the hard triangle is something that you're going to do with your group project by bringing in a new revenue stream. Okay, so this is going to affect the soft 3, but your strategy is to bring in a new revenue stream. The structure, you're going to structure in how you're going to do that, and the systems or the mechanisms and policies that you're going to put in place to change that. And then these will come along, the HR, the staffing, the skills, and the shared values. Okay. So these are some of the positives. Full service decentralization, be able to hire good people. Informal customer service improves and tight cost controls. Some of the negatives are no focus on niches, management by exception, non-confrontational, and we know what the customers want, what they really don't know what the customers want. All right. So, and that brings us to change, which everybody's going to have in their group project. The key phases of change, from going from just making blades into incorporating a new revenue stream, because the company is going to have to change, the employees are going to have to change. So you're going to have to talk about motivating, moving, and maintaining, which is the changing process, the unfreezing. The first step in organizational change is you're going to have to tell the people why you're changing. Basically, you're going to go, they're going to close this down if we don't change, if we don't start making revenue. And then how you're going to change, how you're going to implement all those processes into the fold of already an existing company. And then how you're going to refreeze that, you're going to reinforce that and show them how we're going to stay there. So the state of change, whether the change is major or minor, leaders must be able to clearly articulate what the change is all about, why it's important, and what the positive outcomes of the change will be. All right, so make sure you incorporate that in your group project. I will be looking for that specifically. Listen to feedback. Everyone needs to understand and know what's happening, and the knowledge of feedback. So make sure you collect the feedback. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that, but you can anticipate what some of the feedback's going to be. Use emotional intelligence, explain the why, and define clear roles as to who's going to handle what, and provide the training. All right, and all of these slides you've seen before, so don't get too concerned that I'm going so quickly, and also I will post these after class. All right, and reward acceptance, that was the 8 parts of change. Remember, the first part can take anywhere from half a year to over a year. Second part, a year to 2 years. And then completing the whole thing can take several years. And according to Weigel and Sons, who published this book, that's what they say. I think they're full of shit, but anyway. It's not going to take 7 years to implement change. If it is, you guys are going to go bankrupt. So these are the steps to change. As I said, there's many simulations you can do in games. All right, so a balanced scorecard is one way to judge how to do the current performance, internal performance, future performance, and external performance. And then finally, we started talking about what the corporations really are, how they act, good, bad, evil, and the different types of corporations. So basically, there's 3 types, and under corporations, there's many, many different types of corporations that you can do. And then a corporate governance is the process and structure that provides the ultimate decision-making authority for the firm. Excuse me. Where does the firm want to end up as a company? And these are the procedures and policies to get them there. Then we talked about Burrow and Dodd. Burrow believes that the corporation be run primarily for the shareholders. Dodd thought that the corporation's responsibility is entirely to the community. And they went back and forth about that. We talked about the good and the bad and the evil of a corporation. And basically, a corporation may be a conglomerate of shareholders, but ultimately the corporation is ran by one or two people, a few people at the top. And that's basically like we did the example with Wells Fargo, is the corporation was ran by somebody who was very unethical, somebody who was only worried about making profits. And that somebody got what? $17 million fine and can no longer work in banks anymore. So that was their reward after getting hundreds of millions of dollars in already before that. Okay, so purpose of a corporation, they can own property rights, they can go into contracts, they can enter into agreements, stakeholder model, the belief that the corporation should be run for the benefit of its entire stakeholders, which is the community and everybody else, as opposed to being run for the profit. So the stakeholders are many different people. Employees, managers, and owners are all internal. External stakeholders are the community at large, customers, shareholders, creditors, the government, society, and suppliers. Okay, so we talked about each corporation needs a charter from a particular state, usually the state that they're operating in, which doesn't mean that they're not only operating in that state, they can operate worldwide. A normative stakeholder view that the corporation has legal or moral obligations to work for the benefit of its stakeholders. We talked about that. And corporations are self-governing. Remember, we talked very much about that. And the only government agencies that regulate them are if they pollute or do something that's against the law, or that's something that the government agencies have set rules or regulations or laws against. Okay, so governance board and incentives, agency problem versus principles. Remember, we talked about the agent is the one who works for the company. The principals are the ones that own the company. So shareholders versus principals. Okay, so the agents, and the biggest problem with the agents is modern corporations owned by principals, managed by agents. So sometimes the principals are pushing the agent to make more money, and sometimes by doing that, like in Wells Fargo, they do things that are unethical, they do things that are illegal, and they do things that they shouldn't be doing. Then we talked about what a board of directors are and the fiduciary duty. The fiduciary duty basically states that your duty is to the owner of the company, and you need to do what's in the best interest of them, for them. Inside directors and outside directors, we talked a little bit about the president and the CEO versus outside directors who are not directly involved in the company, but work as advisors in a particular area, a lot of times specialty areas. And then pay for performance and bonuses done correctly is a great thing. Done incorrectly will create a lot of problems with people getting greedy, or maybe some incentives saying if you don't do that, you're going to get fired. Then people will be dishonest sometimes. Stock-based composition, stock options, and stock grant. We all talked, remember we just talked about that last week. Wells Fargo ethics, ethical value. We talked about that. Ethical behavior, what they did, and the culture. The president of the company, the CEO, started a bad culture within the organization, and it continued and it grew to a point to where it got so bad that they got fined. They got fined millions and millions of dollars. Okay, so let me take a drink of Gatorade here. All right. So on the final examination, and I'm going to give you to take home. So you're probably going to see something about the 6 Ds. You're probably going to have to do something similar to this, a business model or canvas. And you're probably going to have to integrate a pastel somewhere in there. So if I was to say something like, Thumbtack was thinking about opening up their company in another foreign country because they haven't yet, what would they need to do? All right, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. You guys look like you're asleep. What's going on? Concerns? Questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Professor. For
Yes.
the business model canvas, do you want it written in each of those as like a sub captions, or do you want it to be written in that like canvas boxes?
You can do it either way. But whichever way you do it, make sure it's nice and neat and easy to read and it's labeled.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions, concerns?
Yeah, Professor, I do have some questions about the projects and the topics you want us to have in there. So in a situation whereby like we are not planning on going international, how do we then incorporate those concepts that have to do with international trade into the project?
Into the group project, you're not. Into the final, you are.
Oh, okay.
The group project's already been done. You guys are not going international. I already stated that.
Uh-huh.
And many people asked me how to apply the pastel to their group project, and I told them they shouldn't because they're not going international.
But the ceramic business is something that has to deal with products coming from Asia. So do we have to kind of mention something like that, how to compete with imported goods?
Well, you're not going to sell, you're not going to go directly into a foreign market.
But you are going to compete with a foreign market.
You're going to compete with the foreign market, yes. Other than tariffs or something of that nature implemented on products being imported,
which will be the differentiation there, because your prices will be lower compared to those coming.
They should be.
They should be, yeah.
So for the group project, you're really not going to, you're going to do some aspects of the economics, the political, maybe, the legal, you can do that if you want, but it's not going to be something I'm looking for in the group project. But I am going to look for, yes, barriers to entry, barriers to market. So that kind of thing I'm looking for.
Okay. That's fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome. But on the final, definitely going to do something like that. Why do you look so confused, Mark?
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, no, just digesting everything.
Okay. Well, I'll stick around for a few minutes. You have any questions, let me know. Thank you, everybody. No class on Wednesday unless you want to come and ask me questions. And you guys have a wonderful spring break, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Professor. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. You too.
See you, Professor. See you around.
See you later.
Thank you.
Take care.
Professor, could you restate the question that you gave for, the sample question that you gave for the final? You said if Thumbtack was thinking about opening in a foreign market, that's what.
Yes. So basically what I said was, here, I'll pull up the slides again. All right, so what I talked about was, okay, so we talked about Gert's 6D model. Remember, when you're going to go into a foreign market, you're going to do a little bit of research into that market, into the type of culture it is, the type of business that they conduct. So then you're probably going to do something like a business model canvas on that. Are all of these things going to be similar or the same to what you're doing? If not, how are they doing it? So like for a revenue stream, say for example, the Canadians love to give money away to find information. So instead of the professionals in Thumbtack paying for it, you have the customers who want the service paying for it. And it's okay in their country and they can get away with doing that. Here in the United States, they can't. So in Canada's probably pretty much the same, but I'm just saying if something was different like that, you would need to know what it is on your business model canvas. Customer relationships. For example, say for example that they only want to do business online. They don't want to call you. They don't want to know where you are or anything. All they want to do is send you an email. As opposed to customer relationships in the United States, people like calling and talking to people. So that might be something that might be different that you're going to have to look at. Excuse me. And then in the pastel, you're going to have to look at the political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal. As opposed to what it is here in the United States. Are the laws different? Is society different? Are they going to accept your product? Are you even going to be able to use your product because the technology level of technology you need to use? For example, if everybody has 3G and has a flip phone in South America, are you going to be able to have something like an Uber app on there where it has all the technological things that need 3 or 4G or 5G? Are you going to be able to work on a 3G network? No, you're not. So those are all the different things that I'm going to throw at you for your final exam.
Okay. Sorry. And if we find that, something is different, do we have to propose a solution or just identify the difference and that's it?
No, you need to pose a solution. So if I say something like Thumbtack's going to go start business in Canada, and if everybody's running off a 3G network, how are you going to resolve that problem?
Okay. When are you going to post the final?
Like I said, probably at the end of this week.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
So you guys will have quite a bit of time to work on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And will you be available to meet with us? Should we have any questions on the final? Okay.
I will be available, yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everything. Have a
You're
great
welcome. Thank you, everyone. Any other questions, concerns?